continuing our reading from The Breathless, Dark Ripples, Part 1. Chapter 5, Holding Back. A little common sense shouldn't be too much to expect from someone so intelligent, should it? It's easy, really, to excuse a child for heedless behavior. Greg had been fairly rambunctious himself up until about age 16. He remembers how easy it was to get carried away in the moment. With Sherlock in university, though, Greg feels entirely justified in cursing him for what is clearly empty-headed recklessness. It may have been Greg's habitual attentiveness that had sent him on the path to his promotion, but having the habit and needing it are two different things. He's learned the difference quite quickly. The first of the new ripples surprised him just 2 weeks before he'd begun his position as sergeant. In the 6 months since then, he's had to readjust to the continual awareness of risk, something that he'd lost touch with over the better years. At first, Greg had battled with a guilty sense of relief at the return of the ripples. They meant danger, yes, but avertible danger. They were his only window into the kid's world, after all. Sherlock had been ever present in his life for over 18 years, like a secret imaginary friend. Well, no, nothing like an imaginary friend at all, really. It's perfectly understandable, at any rate, that seeing Sherlock once more should stir up mixed feelings. Now, it's safe to say that he isn't relieved any longer. In fact, he's starting to get well and truly angry. It isn't as if the first term at university is generally such a threat to life and limb. Greg had done his time at Hendon rather than attend uni, but he gathers that many of the same pitfalls apply to those students as had applied to him and his cohorts in police training. Young people out from under the thumbs of their parents, enjoying the new freedom of drink and debauchery, were sure to risk themselves in some small way now and again. But this isn't a young man out to party. This is someone so wrapped up in himself that everything around him falls by the wayside. After the 5th time, Greg finds himself called to steer a lorry from the kid's path. He stays out late at the pub. Sitting by himself, he frowns his way through a few pints, silently grumbling about his ridiculous lot in life. Who just walks out into the street like that? A bleeding idiot, that's who! Fuck's sake, if everyone was so lost in their own heads as Sherlock fucking Holmes, the roads would be a mess of fatalities every damn day. A busty blonde has her eye on Greg, and he doesn't even notice at first. He's so caught up in his self-pity. He catches on, finally, when she makes a pass by the little table where he sits alone. She pretends to stumble, twisting one of her pretty stiletto heels and bumping gently into his arm. He stirs himself automatically to make sure she's not really hurt, but then he notices the rest of her body language. Smiling politely, almost apologetically, he unlaces his fingers and raises his left hand to bring his beer up for a deliberate swig. Thankfully, the woman decides to steer clear after she sees the ring he's placed on display for her. He watches her go, momentarily amused, but it doesn't take long before his mind returns to the incident that had driven him to drink alone in the first place. I swear, it's like he fucking knows he's got someone watching over his shoulder. He's got no bloody concept of self-preservation. One of these times I should just go on and let something happen to him, teach him a sodding lesson about paying attention. That stops him cold, wide-eyed and shaken at the audacity of his own thought. Of course, he would never do such a thing. God, just carrying that image through to its conclusion makes its stomach flip and squirm. Once, it was primarily superstition that held Greg back from searching out Sherlock Holmes's records, looking the name up in the databases to which he has easy access. Lately, it's probably more like stubbornness. The location of the boarding school that Greg had never sought out may have remained a mystery, but now he knows Sherlock is in London. He's not familiar enough with the features of the various universities to tell which one, and damn it all, he doesn't want to. But there have been obvious city landmarks in many of the ripples. Far from making him curious, these fragments of knowledge only make Greg want to dig in his heels and save his ignorance. At the very least, the thought of crossing paths with his charge gives him an instinctive shiver. If there are rules regarding the use of this gift, they're not something he can consult. He knows he needs to trust his gut. It's all he has. And if his gut is telling him to avoid making contact, that's what he'll do. At the age of 33, Greg hasn't yet budged on the decision he made back when he was 18. No kids. As for Nadia, after 5 years of marriage, she started to waver under inquiries from her family members. At home, she begins to float the idea into their conversations over a period of months, casually at first, and then not so casually. By now, she's seen him in his ripples time and time again, no matter how carefully Greg's worked to hide them as they happen. It's a delicate balance, writing them off so that she doesn't worry overmuch, while simultaneously using them as a subtle excuse for not changing his mind. He tries not to overuse the implication that they're a medical condition. Still, when necessary, he chooses strategic moments to wonder aloud if his episodes might prove hereditary. It's lying, and he hates lying, especially to Dia, but he's had to hone his skills in deception over the years. And at the same time, it's oddly truthful. What if he brought a child into the world and that child ended up saddled with a duty like his? Rewarding as it sometimes seems, he wouldn't force it on anyone else. In early spring, after the subject has gone around yet again in a particularly intense debate, not quite an argument, but close, Greg wakes in the middle of the night, pulling in a deep breath out of panicked reflex and finding it unimpeded. Just a nightmare, he tells himself, sitting up and wrapping his arms tightly over his chest. Just a nightmare. Fucking hell. He tilts his head towards the ceiling and breathes some more. Nadia mumbles beside him. She lifts her head from the pillow and reaches out to touch his arm. It's shaking. Greg? All right, love? Yeah, he manages. Sorry, go back to sleep. I'm fine. She makes an incoherent response, already slipping from her brief wakefulness. In the dream, a faceless team of doctors had showed Greg scans of the massive brain tumor that had been causing his continuing seizures, along with the undeniable proof Sherlock Holmes was merely a persistent hallucination, a dangerous symptom of his condition. There is no way he'll be giving in to the urge to search for Sherlock anytime soon. That would only give his nightmare the opportunity to become real. Greg considers himself lucky that D.I. Parsons had been the one to request him after his advancement. Of all the division's inspectors, Richard Parsons is the easiest to work around. He sincerely doesn't care what his subordinates are doing, so long as they're ready with sharp answers when prompted and jump when he gives an order. Greg's able to slip away as often as he needs to, and while it's possible one or two of the DCs have had occasion to wonder, Parsons remains basically oblivious to his strange behavior. That's a very good thing, as it happens. Sherlock's second and third years at uni have turned out to be a real trial by fire. There are the occasional brawls in various back alleys, outside pubs, which smack suspiciously of purposeful instigation. Sherlock seems to be looking for trouble, using a talent for insult to practice his fighting skills. It's good that he learns, Greg supposes. A little self-defense wouldn't have hurt anything in years past. Still, he's a wisp of a young man compared to some of his indignant opponents, and Greg always ends up intervening sooner or later. There's the week during which Sherlock is carrying out an experiment on the steep roof of the administration building, something disgusting looking involving decomposition in sunlight. Greg repeatedly stops the custodial staff on each shift from locking the windows and stranding Sherlock in his precarious position. Then there's the week Sherlock has apparently decided he's bored with his lectures, as well as bored with stairs. He takes to improving his skills at free climbing various buildings around the university for reasons incomprehensible. It's an incredibly difficult and frustrating week, as seen from Greg's perspective. Thankfully, things calm down somewhat once the time for final exams draws nigh. Greg can only pray that Sherlock will find something a little less heart attack inducing upon which to focus his insatiable intellect once he's no longer hindered by the tedious limitations of being a student. A little common sense shouldn't be too much to expect from someone so intelligent, should it?